The auto stocks have been in focus over the last couple of days. The Union Minister Nitin Gadkari's comments on a possible pollution tax has made that entire debate resurface on diesel. As far as diesel engines are concerned and their use in a country like India that is battling climate change. Although, of course, later the Transport Minister clarified that there is no such discussion currently on about a possible pollution tax. Automakers have their concerns about how it's going to impact their profits if it were to come into play. Remember, India is still very heavily dependent on diesel-run commercial vehicles, and the question remains that if major automakers will trade profit for sustainability, and how quickly can this actually happen? Well, when the Transport Minister was speaking about that proposal for a 10% tax on diesel cars, he said that the share of diesel engines in the Indian vehicle fleet has come down from 63% in 2014 to 18% in 2023. So how strong is the case now for India to discard diesel as a hazardous fuel and substantially, of course, reduce our import burden as well? Let's discuss this with Autocar India editor Hormazd Sorabjee and iForest CEO Chandra Bhushan. Great to have you both with us. Coming to you first, Hormazd. Now, India is looking for cleaner, energy solutions. How far do you think we are from seeing this end to the production of diesel engines in the country? Because already two of the biggest players in the Indian passenger vehicle market, Maruti Suzuki and Honda, both have completely stopped making diesel cars, haven't they?
Yeah, they have. I think Maruti has stopped making it in 2020, but that was more because of an emission regulation they could not meet. I mean, Honda was more marginal, but you still have a large vehicle park, still diesel vehicle parks still. But I think, one needs to clarify right now with the current norms, BS6 and now BS 6.2, which is coming to April. Diesels are, in terms of pollution, as good as petrol. For all practical purposes, and in terms of CO2, far better. So, if at all, I think this vilification of diesel is totally misplaced. One can understand after Dieselgate of Volkswagen and pre-BS4 engines, also BS6 engines, they emitted a fair amount of NOx and PM 2.5, the two main bogies or the two main kind of strong pollutants of diesel. That's been kind of neutralized with DPFs, with NOx traps, all that sort of thing. So I think it's become a little fashionable to beat the anti-diesel drum without knowing the facts. So just to put it very plainly, the facts are today, diesels are super clean, and from a CO2 perspective, which is a sustainability perspective, they are far superior because they're more efficient. They emit less CO2, and we know that CO2 today is public enemy number one, because that's really the main culprit for global warming.
Chandra Bhushan, do weigh in on this. Are we jumping the gun over here by trashing diesel engines? And if it were the case, the big replacement to diesel, what exactly would that be? Because electric is coming up. It is coming up slowly, but surely. There are hybrid and pure electric powertrains that we can see growth in. The government pushing for the use of biofuels like ethanol-blended petrol. The G20 putting the focus on green hydrogen as a viable clean energy option. So in case diesel goes out the way the government would like it, what will be the biggest replacement in the shortest amount of time, you think?
So first of all, this entire diesel debate has to be looked in the perspective of not only pollution, but also how government is planning to get biofuel in. Biofuel blending is possible with petrol, and that's what government is doing right now. As far as I agree completely with the new standards, the difference in pollution level, whether it is PM 2.5, NOx and SOx, between diesel and petrol is gone as far as passenger vehicles are concerned. And therefore, but I do not buy that argument of it is more CO2 efficient, because diesel engine sizes are more and if you normalize the engine size, then the diesel advantage on CO2 is not much. So let's agree on one point that with new standard and newer technology, both CO2 and pollution level of petrol and diesel are more or less same. And therefore, undue focus on diesel just from pollution perspective is not correct. And therefore, we have to look at internal combustion engine in totality. What is going to be the future of internal combustion engine? And that's where I think that looking ahead, the world is now making a transition to electric vehicles. Companies who are going to invest now in electric vehicles are going to be the winner in future. Those who want to continue with diesel and petrol vehicle, good luck to them. In 10 years' time, they will be obsolete. So I am looking at future rather than the current debate. And as I said, I think the minister's entire comment on diesel is not only with respect to pollution, but also how India is looking to bring biofuel, blend biofuel, and reduce import of fossil fuels, which is close to $160 billion right now. We import 90% of all our oil need. So I think it's much more in context of a larger debate than only in terms of pollution.
Today, we have to concede also that India needs to increase its truck fleet 4 times. And the target is by the year 2050, we need to kind of have that kind of increase to keep the economic engines of growth moving. Most of our commercial vehicles, they run on diesel today. So how quickly do you expect a shift to happen if diesel falls out of favor? As quickly as the Transport Minister would like, with the kind of announcement that was made and later retracted? And what else does the government need to do to stimulate more demand for EVs at this stage?
So, listen, as far as commercial vehicles are concerned, hydrogen and batteries are at least a decade away. I think we need to be very clear about it. There is a lot of noise happening about commercial fleet. I don't think the minister's statement was with respect to commercial vehicle. Everyone knows in the market that to replace the kind of heavy commercial vehicles that India has or across the world we have, we are a decade away as far as getting in mass the commercial vehicle to replace diesel vehicles. So that comment of minister was both with respect to passenger vehicles. I believe that. But going ahead, I do think that companies should start thinking about investing in heavy commercial vehicles. If you start investing in technology and platforms, maybe in 10 years' time, you will be there to introduce both hydrogen and electric vehicles in the market. But for me, commercial vehicle is at least 2030 or even beyond.
More number of years. Hormazd, today, if you were to only concentrate on passenger vehicles and look at SUVs, which is the mainstay when you talk about passenger vehicles today, SUVs attract the highest GST at 28%. Then there is a compensation cess, which is 22%. This means a diesel SUV, it draws a total tax of 50%. And now, with this additional 10% tax that was talked about, it would even go up to 60% for diesel SUVs. Tell us how the pricing mechanism when it comes to diesel vehicles, even if you consider only those in the passenger segment, how that is going to have a role to play with the alternatives that we are considering.
Well, I think firstly we need to clarify, because the minister has clarified that, that extra 10% is just a suggestion. It's not going to be going forward. So I don't think we should even assume that it's going to go up by 10%. But having said that, the cost of diesel vehicles are going up year by year, largely because to make them compliant with tighter regulations, the technology is getting more expensive. And as a result, what you are seeing is that the lower end diesels are totally not viable. You don't have any diesels, below 10 lakhs really. I'm talking about the hatchbacks, compact sedans, stuff like that. You have one hatchback, you've got the Alto still there, but I think, that's about it, because everyone realizes that diesels are getting very, very expensive to produce, because the cleanup technology that is needed to make them super clean is like having a laboratory on wheels now. SCR, AdBlue, all that sort of thing, DPFs. So it's very complex kind of cleanup technology. So I think it's going to die a natural death, which is, I think, the way it should be. Let regulations take its course rather than forcing some kind of a technological change. And I think, with the next regulation change, probably we'll have diesels going down a little bit more. So I think that's what's going to happen. And we're going to see alternate, let's say propulsion powertrains like EVs are coming up. You're going to have, biofuels. Also, there's going to be a push on that. So multiple powertrains are there. I think the best thing to do is let the regulations decide the fate of whether diesel, petrol, or whatever should be around.
Which happens, you'd rather see it coming through regulations rather than technological shifts. Would you agree with that, Chandra Bhushan? From a user perspective, how much sense right now does it make for India to give up diesel vehicles in terms of affordability and other factors? How much of that push needs to come from the government side by way of the subsidies that are being given out to EV makers, etc.?
So, you don't have affordable diesel vehicles right now because most of the diesel vehicles are in a higher bracket as far as price is concerned. So I don't think that from affordability perspective or from mass use, diesel is the vehicle right now. And I agree that with the next generation of standards, it will become almost impossible for diesel vehicles to meet those standards. And therefore, a natural death is something that should be forecasted for diesel vehicles in next couple of maybe in a decade you will see diesel vehicle getting out of the market. Passenger cars. I'm not talking about commercial vehicles. I do see commercial vehicles lasting a little longer.
Hormazd, what do you think it's going to take for users who've really loved their internal combustion engines, for them to make the shift to any kind of shift that the government to be able to meet its targets, etc.? What is it going to take?
I think the shift is towards electrification. I think the government has done one really good thing, which is a fantastic taxation for it. I mean, 5% GST that really makes electric vehicles that much more affordable. They're still expensive, but the 5% GST certainly helps, and I think that's a great first step. I think consumers have embraced EVs, but they're still an urban phenomenon. I think there's a long way to go before you can use them on the highway. It can be your primary car if you're going to be using it, to go long distances as well, because the charging infrastructure is falling behind the pace of EV adoption, and that is a concern. So I think the focus should be on, really boosting the charging infrastructure. I mean, it's there, but, it's not reliable. It's not fast enough. We've driven the length and breadth of the country. We drove from Kashmir to Kanyakumari in a Porsche. And, while it was possible, it wasn't easy because many of the chargers, they just weren't working at times. So, it's a big challenge. These are still early days. But, clearly, I think for me, the biggest, I wouldn't say hurdle, but I think where, I think the kind of pace of charging infra is really not keeping pace with the rest of EV adoption. And even from a pricing point of view, consumers are accepting the current pricing of EVs, which is expensive, but it's not ridiculous and over the top, and not too far away from their IC counterparts.
Fuel, as far as India is concerned, there are targets to meet and the government is pushing for them. Will it be through regulations? Are there going to be technological shifts that is going to propel users to make the kind of shifts that are going to be necessary? We'll have to wait and watch. But for the moment, it's where we're leaving this debate. Chandra Bhushan and Hormazd Sorabjee, many thanks for joining us with your perspective on this.